Data suggests a different story, though. And here are some of the key stats that I would like to quote. Africa today accounts for 40% of the global reserves of the critical minerals that are key in the energy transition. The continent leads the world in mobile banking, with sub-Saharan Africa holding nearly 50% of the global mobile money accounts and driving $2.5 billion in transactions on a daily basis. The expansion of fintech solutions led by M-Pesa, as an example, is broadening financial inclusion, particularly among underserviced communities. Africa's population of nearly 1.5 billion is forecasted to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. This is evident in the urban population growth that we've seen of approximately 350 million people in 2014 to nearly 500 million by the end of 2023, representing a 40% growth in just a decade. Of particular interest is its youthful demographic, which represents an untapped market and workforce, ready to drive the economic growth of each of our markets. Lastly, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area holds a promise of creating the largest free trade area in the world, boosting intra-Africa trade and promoting economic integration. So why are we here today? This conference aims to find solutions that are necessary for Africa's growth and to tackle issues in relation to Africa's debt and credit outlook. So how do we meet our financing needs without compromising our own growth and the sovereignty of each of our countries? Closing the infrastructure gap. What are some of the innovative funding models that can unlock Africa's full potential? The issue around energy stability and transition. How can we secure Africa's energy while embracing sustainability? Navigating this real difficult macroeconomic volatility. How does Africa respond cohesively to the big shifts in the global geopolitics and to be still able to deliver really strong growth? What are some of the structural and policy reforms that are necessary that will position Africa as a winning investment destination and attract the foreign direct investment? And lastly, what are some of these challenges that we're presently facing that require decisive and actionable solutions? The continent's economic fundamentals remain strong. According to the African Development Bank, GDP growth is still forecasted to reach 4% in 2025 and nearly 4.5% by 2026, outpacing many other emerging markets. Africa also remains the world's second fastest growing region after Asia, with 12 of the 20 fastest growing economies projected to be in the continent. And whilst Africa's prospects and economic resilience are undeniable, achieving these growth rates requires resolute policy actions. Increased coordination between monetary and fiscal policies is required to manage issues such as inflation while promoting economic development. Furthermore, Africa's external debt now surpasses $1.5 trillion. And that is a number that often makes headlines, and rightly so. But I think one of the things of more concern to myself and the team at Standard Bank is the additional cost of the debt burden, which we believe stems from the inflated risk assessment, resulting in higher grades from rating agencies and increased market pricing. A 2023 study reported by the Africa Practice reveals that the continent could be losing up to $4.2 billion annually in interest payments on its loans, primarily of this inflated risk assessment. At Standard Bank, we're working with governments, multilaterals, and investors to design what we believe are financing solutions that will drive the long-term stability. We believe that Africa risk premium can be mitigated through improved investor relations, adherence to orthodox fiscal and monetary policies, and efficient use of borrowed funds. Africa's success should be predicated on investment, innovation, and economic development, rather than constrained by debt levels.
Global trade growth this year will still grow at around 3, maybe 4%. It's worth also considering that 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing trade corridors exclude the United States. That means that trade connectivity is expanding, even if the bifurcation is the United States and the rest of the world. With Europe even now, who would have thought, being a representative of the global north, embracing the global south. As an adversary, the United States stands in that paradigm. We've argued for a length of time that economic activity is shifting from the west to the east. But it's not that simple. We cling to this notion, but it will not be a straight line. I'll amplify on that in a moment. There's a greater level of intolerance around the world. Democratic dispensation increasingly being overtaken by illiberalism. And that illiberalism creating more extremities in terms of the level of discord, polarization in society. The last 30 years, the World Wide Web and the Internet of Things was foundational to providing impetus to global economic growth. And now it's artificial intelligence that is going to provide the next set of S-curves, along with quantum computing. One of the very significant differences is that for the last 30 years, the World Wide Web and the Internet of Stuff was largely free. One just needed hardware, not to belittle accessing hardware as a sometimes barrier to entry. But governments did not seek primacy in technology the way they do now. And the microchip wars and the attempt by the United States to preclude, say, China from being able to get access to more sophisticated technology is significant. I'll amplify on that too. Lastly, even though this list is not certainly exhaustive, seem to have shifted from the last couple of years of woke thinking to the idea that if you go woke, you'll go broke. And certainly, it's become the nemesis of the President Trump administration. Like I said a moment ago, this list is not exhaustive, but it does speak, and I hope articulate the notion that these are structural changes. It's not simply incremental movement. And structural changes across broad lines of society and that even mingle to amplify the extent of change. But as I also said a moment ago, this has been brewing for some time. This exhibit is just to give you a sense of certainly the trade uncertainty and more broader policy uncertainty. So the orange line has been escalating for some time. The blue line speaks to trade uncertainty, and particularly President Trump's first term. In fact, it was in his second year, during his first term, when he began to more vigorously assail China. And of course, this time around, it's the rest of the world as well. In addition to this, and for the many reasons that seem to explain why we have this level of geopolitical tension, populist leaders are in fact in abundance across various geographies. Big men is what we may sometimes reference them. And there's many reasons that has given flourish to populism, and hence populist leaders with some level of charisma and charm and riz, garnering society's angst and using it to weaponize their political agendas. A little bit novel, but this exhibit, what I aim to just show is the K-economy. The exhibit on the right side, as I said, a little bit novel, showing the price of Ferrari and the price of Dollar General. The idea being that those with high incomes spending discretionary income on luxury items, seeing the revenues of the purveyors of their discretionary items certainly soaring, and certainly incomes or revenues, profits, as well as share price. But Dollar General, a purveyor of basic necessities for price-sensitive consumers, slumping, giving breath to that idea of a K-economy. And the exhibit on the right is just simply the stock market, the S&P 500, and working class incomes. And again, the idea that, to speak colloquially, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And so they give impetus for the likes of President Trump to be able to either be selling a constructive path or a snake oil salesman, which time will tell. We think AI is momentous for a variety of reasons, apart from being the most potent technology that humankind has ever embraced. But we think that America's assailing the world, and particularly in due course China, speaks to the connectivity of the parallels between this era in artificial intelligence and what it means in terms of the Industrial Revolution more than 100 years ago. The Industrial Revolution and the takeaways from that are significant to the extent that what it meant was a few nations that were at the frontier of the Industrial Revolution, the United Kingdom, the United States, Japan, and even Russia, frontier nations that led the Industrial Revolution, would come to conquer the rest of the world. Most other nations during that era did not even know what was happening. Most other nations would become followers, and in fact the level of command and authority that the frontier nations, those that led and were at the helm of the Industrial Revolution, dominated the world. And in some sense you could argue that the Industrial Revolution spawned a great deal of global inequality. The laggards would follow and would be left behind in terms of income progress. Today, artificial intelligence is the latter-day spinning wheel. It is the latter-day telegram. It is the latter-day steam engine. And nations that have primacy, nations that are at the frontier of artificial intelligence and in due course even quantum computing, will probably be able to have a level of global economic command that surpasses everyone else. And I think Mr. Musk, the Thomas Edison of our time, as some would say, first friend to the President of the United States, gets this. So, America, recognizing that it has been, at least now for years, an empire in decline, is attempting to arrest that trend by harnessing these modern-day technologies at the expense of others to be able to generate that level of economic verve. And if we thought that the Industrial Revolution generated a great deal of inequality, it's quite possible. And this winner-takes-all world, and we've generally thought of winner-takes-all sometimes as individuals, sometimes as companies, but winner-takes-all in terms of nation-states also in this competition. I think Elon Musk gets it, and certainly imposing these views on Donald Trump. And some people say, what's the method to the madness? I suspect, and of course we could be wrong, that some of that method relates to this argument that we've just suggested in terms of a latter-day industrial revolution rooted in artificial intelligence.